Hey, and welcome to the Lean Nation today. And as usual, we're bringing guests to you that will have a profound impact on your thinking, the way you lead your organization, and the way that you kind of think about yourself. So today's guest is Jacob Stoller. He's out of Canada. He's got a brand new book out called The Lean CEO, Leading the Way to World-Class Excellence. Jacob, welcome to the Lean Nation today.
Thank you, Karl. Great to be here.
So you've been doing lean for a long time, and you've been around and kind of researching and working on lean. Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, Karl, I've always been sort of the guy that communicates between experts and non-experts, you know. So I worked actually for many years with IT, helping IT explain IT concepts to non-IT people, that sort of thing. So that naturally evolved into other things, finance, engineering, and then lean. So, but my interest is still sort of the communications. So I'm really intrigued by how do people doing lean work communicate with people that don't know anything about lean. So I thought that the CEOs would be great people to ask about that, because I know that CEOs are sort of at the end of the line when it comes to communications, you know. They're the ones who have to explain it to the stakeholders, etc.
And have to live with it themselves at the end of the evening.
And live with the consequences. Yep.
And you know, we just did a big Gemba walk, and you know I'm involved with a group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization.
Yes, I know that, Carl. I think that's fantastic.
And WPO. And we had a couple thought leaders that followed along with us, some academians, some people that really write. And they were really, really impressed with how much responsibility a CEO of a mid-sized company to even a large company, if it's privately held, how much they're responsible for. And I think that's what you kind of took in this book, to break down that it can be fun, it can be challenging, it can be your worst nightmare, and it can define you, right?
Absolutely. I think that the beauty of lean is that it takes a lot of these things that have been kind of mystical, about being a leader. You know, people talk about personalities and all these kinds of things, but really breaking down what leaders have to do in a practical way so that the leader can share those duties with other people. And I think you've done a fabulous job of that. And I think what I really like about the tours you're doing, Karl, is that you're trying to do the same thing I've been trying to do. You're communicating this to people outside of the lean world and trying to get that message through.
Right. And we're not trying to get people to follow our recipe one iota. We're just trying to get them to understand that they have their own recipe, their own people, their own culture, and what are you going to do with it?
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things I think people will find in the book is that when you look at these people, they're so different, right?
Right.
I mean, even some of the friends that you have that are in the book, somebody like Jim Lancaster are very, very different from you.
Exactly.
They have different problems. They have different style business, and gosh, you're nothing like the people in healthcare that are in the book. Yet when it comes to process and people, you're all talking the same language.
Exactly. And we're all cherishing the kind of cultures that we've developed in our groups, and know that culture is really the piece that helps us along. So in the book, you have the kind of chapters, you have 11 chapters, I think, if I remember correctly. So 14 chapters.
Yeah.
And what was the construct for the chapters? Because you have some very, very unique chapters and unique people, and what was your vision for putting this together this way?
Okay, well, first of all, Karl, I really wanted to make this book accessible to people that didn't know anything about lean.
Okay.
So really the first couple of chapters anyway, really the first three are designed to give people the background they need to understand the rest of the book. And I'm happy to say that that's worked out pretty well. I mean, I have had feedback now from a number of non-lean readers, and they are getting it. So I'm really pleased about that. What I did with the rest of the book is I looked at the business problems that CEOs were facing when they started their lean transformations. And this could be anything from, facing a financial crisis to having a productivity crisis with their people, to the healthcare situation which is very specific,
Right.
where you have sort of a crunch between I guess I call it a cost quality conundrum. So these problems are really, really quite different, but yet lean seems to take people on the same journey, and it seems to solve this incredible variety of problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
So that was the structure there. Again, to finish off with your question, was to present those things in some kind of sequence so people could see those different scenarios and how they play out.
yeah, and I'm glad to see that you're getting feedback too from the people that are buying the book, reading the book, and you've been promoting it as well, that they get the connection of this, that lean really isn't something nebulous, something scary, that it's really in our DNA, and how do we get it to work for us, and service that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that that's happening.
Yeah.
When you were doing the book, did you have you put together something like this? You interviewed probably half a dozen to a dozen different people, and maybe even more. But did you have an aha moment as you were putting this together?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were several, Carl, but it's funny. I started looking at this, and I was intrigued by the mechanics of lean.
Okay.
Right, and I really got into that at the beginning, and as I progressed, and as I talked to more and more CEOs, I started to realize that this is about people. This isn't about mechanics. The mechanics were practiced very, very differently, and people came at it in different ways, but they all had quite similar ideas about how to manage people and really things like productivity, employee engagement, and all that, and the importance of those things. So that to me was a kind of an evolution, if you will, of thinking, and I'm surprised that I didn't get it earlier. Now it seems so obvious.
Yeah, and one of my heroes and personal good friends is Jim Lancaster down at Lantec, and they've been on this journey for a long, long time. I mean, Jim Womack and the Machine That Changed the World was one of their case studies, I think, if I remember correctly.
It was, and it has, of course, there's a double history there, which we were able to cover because we were able to talk with Pat about the beginnings, and that's what you see in lean thinking, Womack and Jones, and then Jim very adeptly kind of picked up the story and took the lean journey to another level, and I think that's a really fascinating story in itself.
Yeah. And going down there, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go down there, but I mean, Jim does
No, I haven't.
does a 4-hour Gemba walk every morning. Every morning. Leaders standard work. It's unbelievable. And I brought a crew of people through. But those are some of the stories. The learning moment that you had. What do you want readers to really get out of this? What's the best day, if you could have somebody walk up to you on the street and say, you know what, Jacob, I didn't know that, and thank God you kind of made me aware of that. Are there any of those things that you really want readers to pick up on?
Well, somebody actually wrote me an email yesterday, and it really kind of made it for me. He said, "Thank you for expanding my view of the world."
Awesome.
That's really what I would like to see. I'd like to see that there really people saying, there really is a better way to manage organizations, and there are better ways for people to work together.
Yeah. And especially the healthcare people. You must have had you ever had any experience talking with healthcare people and seeing some of the big, hairy, roadblocks and some of the things that they have besides what we see on the news and an in-depth view of those?
I had actually, I had done interviews with lean healthcare people. Those were some of the first case studies I ever wrote, actually, and that goes back long before the book.
Okay.
So yeah, healthcare was kind of a beginning for me, and in a way, Carl, healthcare is in some ways it's easier to understand, right? Because the customer actually is, I think if you're building things, whatever you're building is like a proxy for the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You treat it that well because you know that this is for the customer. But in this case, there's no proxy. It is the customer that has to flow through the system. So it's obviously a lot more sensitive, and when we have problems, they are much more visible.
So, in the early days, you had some exposure to healthcare, and now you did in 2014-15 the release of the book. Did you see any big changes in just the way that their thinking is, or any things that kind of really showed that there's some progress, or that they have more traction into healthcare? Did you feel that when you were writing about that?
I think the messages in there are hopeful. I think there's some positive signs that it's catching on. I know John Toussaint is, he has hundreds and hundreds of executives going through Theta Care. I know that Virginia Mason is the same thing. There's just a lot of people visiting, seeing for themselves what a lean environment can look like. And I know what seeing a lean environment can do to people. So I think it's, I'm cautiously optimistic about healthcare, that given the pressure and given that the lean option is getting better known, that things can happen.
Yeah, the critical mass here too, Jacob, as you know, what we do with our tours and everything is that we're trying to allow people to come here so they get some exposure to this, kind of like the first 3 chapters of your book. Get them in here, give a general overview, then go a little bit deeper and show what's in it for me, why should I care, and really, where do I start? So for the book and for the general economy in the world, this is critical thinking for all of us here. And I hope that people really pick up this book and start reading and asking. I'm sure a lot of the people that you interviewed here, they all have organizations and places that you can go and see them. You can go see the organization. They have a long time standing track record for staying on this bandwagon, right?
Yeah, they do, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I hope that the book is a springboard that'll encourage people to read more, to go and see some lean sites, because yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to see it to really understand it.
Yeah, if you don't do that, then you really shortchange yourself. And like I said, a few weeks ago, I led 75 CEO presidents from Japan to Mexico to Canada, Europe, and we visited 14 different companies in 3 days.
Wow.
So it was a lot of bus time, and there was a lot of logistics moving around. But to see that many companies that quickly, it kind of tunes you in that everybody has to pick up their own culture, and you really have to open your eyes and listen when you go to organizations, because we all have so many unique and different challenges.
Exactly.
But we're all using a similar process: people, communication, problem solving, to kind of get us quicker, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's wonderful. That's a great story, Karl.
So how would you recommend that someone new? What would you like to see for someone new on this, since you've been around for a while writing this, that they pick up the book for the first time? Because many people still don't know that there's a tool called Lean out there. What would you suggest to some of our listeners? Because we have new listeners and people that are well along. What would you recommend?
Okay, I think you sort of said it earlier. It's about asking questions. I think that we've built a sort of an outmoded style of management based on a sort of the false idea that managers can know all the answers. That you can go maybe study in business school or engineering school or something and know from textbooks and theories and rules and algorithms how to instruct people what to do. And it's I think maybe the first lesson is when you go and see a place is that you find out what you don't know. You find out what it's really like in the workplace. So I guess that would be the main thing. Ask questions, go and see, just very simple. Don't take it for granted that what your financial report says is telling you what you need to know to run your business.
How true that is. The bet you go to where the action is on the floor. And,
Absolutely.
And from a good friend, John Carrier, he talks about hidden factories. And I love that notion of hidden factories.
Really? Okay.
Because there's so many things going on factory floors, in the offices, whether it's the hospitals, whatever organization it is that people are trying to do a good job. But in so trying to do a good job, they create these whole other little routines and systems instead of just saying, hey, we have a problem and I'm stopped here, and people don't like stopping, and they don't know that there's a lean tool to help them go further, and they start this little factory. I'm sure you've seen hundreds and hundreds of those as you've been across the globe.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So how would you tell somebody, which chapters would you refer somebody to? You set these chapters up. Is it a building process, the chapters? And can I start somewhere? How should I read the book if I'm a reader?
Karl, I really don't. I think it has to be kind of a supplement, I guess, to other learning. I'm not a lean sensei, so yep. I'm not the guy who can tell you how to launch your lean journey. What I'm trying to do is maybe open some doors, some ideas to think about. So I hope people read it as a story. Here's the story of a new way of management. Here are some people that have really committed to it and been really successful at it. Read the story, and then hopefully you'll want to go to the next step, which is to learn more and experience what's happening in companies, and then also learn how that might apply to your company.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because the stories are really inspirational. And John Toussaint, if you remember speaking to him, he went to Aaron's Lawnmowers, Dan Aaron's, right down the street.
That's right, yeah, and that's in the book, yeah.
And Dan Aaron's is, believe it or not, a YPO member. We were there a few years ago, rather.
No kidding, okay.
And when you go into Aaron's and watch the velocity that these guys are building all this lawn and garden equipment, and keeping it in America, keeping it in Wisconsin area, and the challenges that they had from abroad in equipment, and to think that someone that was the CEO, president of a hospital, was able to put together pulleys, sprockets, blades, mowers, engines, that there was a system going on, and being able to go back to the hospital and say, guys, I have a vision for us. Let's go. Isn't that remarkable?
It's a remarkable story. That's actually, we did get that in the book, and I didn't realize that Dan Ahrens is involved with YPO, but I think there was a wonderful aha moment where John Toussaint was, he really needed to find a better management system, because he knew that the systems in healthcare weren't getting the kind of results he needed. Yet there were manufacturers getting near zero defects. And he said, well, why can't we get those kinds of quality numbers in healthcare? And he went to Aaron's, and he watched how they were handling snowblowers. And he had this kind of epiphany where he watched snowblowers on carts being handled and handed off back and forth between different cells, and watched the people communicating over it. And he said, gosh, these people are taking better care of these snowblowers than we're taking care of our patients. So, and he could see the patients on gurneys being the same thing as a snowblower on a cart.
Right.
So that was really, I think, something that inspired not only John Toussaint, but his entire executive team.
Yeah.
They were all able to see that. So that's quite a powerful story.
So, the pieces that I got out of the book and the different chapters, where there were defining moments for both the organizations and the leaders of the organizations. And instead of getting paralyzed, which is kind of a knee-jerk reaction and feeling defeated, They all had some kind of reflection, and serendipitously, they had some kind of connection somewhere in the universe here of pulling out of it and seeing something greater than self, because it wasn't about them. I don't think any one of these it was about them. It was about their organization and their people, and how do we drive ourselves to a better place.
Gosh, isn't that true, Carl? And you know, it's you look at any kind of high performance athlete or a musician or anybody, and it's always, you know, when you're performing under pressure, it's always believing in something larger than yourself is what pulls you through.
Yeah. It must have been a real treat to talk to these different people and kind of put these stories together.
It was very, very inspiring.
Yeah.
And you were certainly a great contributor, Carl.
Well, in our own small way, and we're kind of the end of things that no one can come into our organization and say, well, they have a super big budget, they have a really big team, they only have a few customers, which we have 360,000 global. So my hope is when they come in here that people walk out and say, if these guys can do it, we can do it for sure. Right?
Yeah, I think so, Carl. I mean, that you've made it very accessible. You're very open talking about it, and you're very open, I think, in letting your people talk to visitors as well. So, you know, you're not trying to mystify anything. I think you bring it all out in the open in a very accessible way.
Yeah. And the one thing, you know, we've been working on the public sector. I don't think you had any public sector people in the book yet.
Yeah, we did actually. We had.
Which chapter was that?
Well, it was chapter 13, so it was towards the end.
Oh, okay.
Towards the end, we got a couple of states and we got a province in Canada.
That's right.
As well.
You did have the government piece.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that was very interesting. You know, the government angle is you know, it's just as needed as anywhere else, obviously. You know, and you know, when you look just at some of their processes. I mean, they've got processes that were 150 steps, and they reduce it down to 45 steps. You know, I mean, you know, you just think about it. If you're trying to get a building permit or an environmental permit, or if you're somebody that's trying to adopt a child or something like that, you know, these processes go on and on and on. And taking steps off these processes is just enormously productive.
Yeah, no, I remember that. That was my faux pas, because I remember the piece of the value of the speeding ticket. And
there you go.
And there's really no better, more profound area, because in our organizations, we can control what's inside our four walls. And we hope that our leader gives us the artistic, authority to kind of change things if we don't like them. But you know, with our public sectors, our governments and our state agencies and municipal agencies and counties, we can't change that, and everybody's really, really frustrated with this. So it's like working for a big organization, knowing there has to be a better way. But this is critical that we all help in and pitch in to help these people out.
Yeah, and I think you've taken the right attitude, Carl, and that is, having it's sort of a civic responsibility. I mean, you know that those potholes in the roads, you know that they're your roads. So, it's, and I think that's actually how lean government has thrived, is that there've been sort of civically minded people in various corporations that have been willing to help out, because the governments don't have a lot of resources that they can invest in lean. You know, they don't go hiring a lot of help. They get a lot of it free from corporations.
Yeah, and we talked earlier on a little bit about business schools and the STEM kind of programs, that they do a great job of teaching us the things we need to, work in a field and do things, but it doesn't teach us the human side about organizationally. You have all these people you have to deal with and all these processes. So think about political science. When you go to a poli-sci major, do they even get into anything of the human side like we look at in lean? I don't even think so in any of the schools that I've seen.
Yeah, I doubt that they do. Again, because I think they tend to work with lots of assumptions and rules and algorithms, and there's not enough of the go and see. Genshi Genbutsu, I guess you call it.
You bet.
Uh, yeah, it's. I think it's too theoretical.
So, we're almost up on the half hour here, Jacob.
Okay.
So I'd like you to, tell us a little bit about the listeners on Lean Nation, how we can find you. Do you have a blog? What are the next steps for Jacob? So this is your time to give us a little bit of promo.
Sure. Okay. Well, my website's easy to remember. It's just my name, jacobstoller.com. That's JACOBSTOLLER.com. And that's got information about the book, and it's got a link to my blog, which I'm just starting to ramp up on here. So, I hope people will join the conversation. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that there wasn't room to say in the book because people didn't want to hear from me. They wanted to hear from CEOs. Mm-hmm. So I've actually tried to continue some of the things that I've been thinking about and talking about on the blogs, etc. So it's an ongoing conversation.
And are you going to be speaking anywhere in the near future at any conventions or lean gatherings or operational gatherings that our listeners should know about?
Nothing yet, Carl, but we're working on that.
Okay, good. Well, every time I'm out there and speaking, I'm going to make sure I have the book up front because
well, thank you, Carl.
It's really important for our leaders to read this. It's important for academia to get a hold of this and get students thinking about this, about what's their style, being comfortable in their skin, getting to maximize the human capital of the people that they have in an organization. Mm-hmm. Right?
That's great. Well, I'm glad it's you're finding it useful, Carl.
All right. And we're going to have Ed. Ed will put this up. We'll have this posted on Lean Nation. Ed will have Jacob's web address. He'll have the blog spot and everything. Jacob, I want to thank you for being on the Lean Nation today. And we're over and out.